Hello, and welcome to What Moves Us, the podcast where we ask what moves us, or more accurately, what's going to move us in future.
With the Rail Innovation Group's Johannah Liam and Liam Henderson, we look at debates, themes, and decisions of the minute that will impact on the way we get about in the future.
Hello, Johannah. How are you doing today?
I'm very well, thank you.
I noticed you showing me a cat.
I know, that's Sappy. She's my wee office pal.
Right. An AI-generated cat or not?
Not AI generated. No, she's far too fluffy to be AI generated.
Right. Okay. So, where are you today?
I'm in Pitlochry. Don't get out and about very often these days.
Well, I was about to say, I'm obviously in London today. The last time we spoke, you were on a bus on the way back from Edinburgh to Pitlochry, I believe.
Oh, yes.
I was going to ask how we just had a look at the stats for public transport use since pre-COVID, and we're now back up to 100% of rail, and the buses are coming back. I was wondering if you think the £2 bus fare thing that's been extended is making any difference?
Well, the stats certainly seem to show that it's making a difference. Because I was looking at something recently, because we don't have the £2 bus fare in Scotland, but there are different concessions available. Because last year it was introduced for under 22-year-olds to all have free travel, and of course, if you're over 60 in Scotland, you also get free travel as well. Unlike in some parts of England, where I believe it's pegged to the pension age of 67, I think it is.
Oh, okay. I was going to ask which of the two Scottish schemes you qualify for.
Unfortunately, neither. But having said that, they do have a project, a campaign up in Scotland as well called Love My Bus, and I think it's going on at the moment, or it's going to be in a couple of weeks. And they do have sort of like all sorts of offers on during that week where you can try the bus to see if you prefer it. But of course, being in Pitlochry, we do get the intercity style buses come through, such as Megabus and City Links and that, and they offer a really good service into either the centre of Edinburgh, Glasgow, and up to Inverness, with various places where you can change to also hook up to other destinations within Scotland. So it's a really convenient way to travel. It's quite comfortable. It's got Wi-Fi on board. They also have very handy little places for you to stick your phone that can charge, and you can watch something of your choice while you're playing. So I find the whole experience of bus works quite well in Scotland.
Right.
And I know that I've spoken to many of the people involved in running buses and told them as well how much I love the bus.
Right. So what do you watch when you're in the bus journeys?
What do I watch?
Yeah.
Well, it depends, but of course, my favourite at the moment is The Marvellous Mrs. Maisel, which is on the final season.
Right. Well, I haven't watched it myself, so don't tell me the ending in case I ever watch it.
I haven't watched it for a couple of weeks, because they haven't downloaded it all at once at the moment. So they've been doing 2 episodes a week, I think. So I don't think it's quite at the end, and I think I've got a couple of weeks to catch up on anyway.
Right. Well, look forward to that, definitely.
But yeah, the bus works really well in Scotland, and I guess and I guess one of the reasons why it does work well is because whilst you have the intercity services, rail doesn't go everywhere in Scotland. So road transport, whether that is by car or by bus, is pretty important, because it provides that connectivity. And I think that's one of the reasons why I do really like the buses, because it all seems to work seamlessly together because of that.
Right. So you're obviously in a rural area, very nice rural area in the mountains. Are you seeing any expansion or any talk of future mobility in your area?
No, but there is a conference on tomorrow, the 11th of May. I had to look at the date of my calendar because they all seem to go into one, called The Gathering, which is run by the Scottish Rural Islands Transport Committee. It's not committee, is it? The Scottish Rural and Islands Transport Community. Of course, it had to be a community, didn't it? Not so, and they are debating some of the issues that rural transport particularly has. And that's being attended by the Scottish Transport Minister as well. So it's got good coverage. And I think the thing that you particularly see up here in Scotland is not so much the controversy, the problems with rail or with buses or anything. It's the controversy over the ferry contracts. And in fact, after many years, they still haven't been delivered. They're vastly over budget, and they still don't have ferries. They still don't have the new ferries. And I think, as ever with these transport issues, is that they affect people's lives. These are issues that on some islands in Scotland, I say some, on a lot of islands in Scotland, they really are the lifeblood. So even if you just want to do something that in the city you take for granted, like going to a hospital appointment, in Scotland it can be a 2 or 3 day round trip to go to a hospital appointment, and if they cancel the ferry, then that's you've missed your hospital appointment. So it really is a big issue, and that's why it gets so much attention. So that'll also be some of the issues that are being debated on, at the gathering up at the Boat of Garton. But also, I mean, I've not seen a huge expansion of it, but I guess the thing that is they're piloting a lot up here is mobility as a service and demand responsive transport, and certainly community-led transport. But I think what concerns me about some of these things, particularly community-led transport, is that it relies on volunteers. And I really do wonder, how sustainable is, particularly in rural locations, because they do tend to be more older populations, is really how sustainable are running what should be public services on a volunteer basis. We need these services. We should be paying for them, because they're kind of false economies, I personally think.
Right. Okay. And have you been on your driverless bus yet up there?
I haven't, because it's only being trialled around the Tay, isn't it? Sort of like going over the old Queensferry crossing. So no, I haven't had a go. Maybe I should go and find out a bit more about it and have a go.
Oh, absolute site visit.
So what have you been up to then?
Well, apart from trying to cram in 5 days of work to 4 for the last few weeks, and dodging the rain. We've had a lot of rain. What have I been up to? A lot of Rail Innovation Group stuff. We are releasing our thought piece on public funding, hopefully tomorrow, so look out for that. But by the time you listen to this, it will already have been released. So have a read, head to our website, railinnovationgroup.com.
Why should people read it? Why would people be interested in it? What's it going to say?
Well, if they don't read it, then they'll miss out, mainly. But we did we should have done a whole podcast on this, but I will give you the highlights, which are, we had a conversation with our wider community and our members, and we asked them, have you received any public funding support for projects or solution builds? And if you have, tell us about your experience with receiving that funding and getting to market. So we had a lot of feedback, which we have anonymized to we thought it may have some commercial issues if we didn't anonymize it. So it is anonymized, but we've taken direct quotes from the responses, feedback, and crafted them into a report that comes up with 5 recommendations for improving the way funding is can support innovation in rail. A lot of it is around the way that obviously there's a sort of a contrast in the way that obviously the public sector has to work in where you specify things in advance, you agree to them in advance, and then you track delivery, whereas startups look at an opportunity, try something, doesn't work, changes the product slightly, changes the market slightly, changes who they're aiming at slightly, and then one of those will be successful. But trying to map those two things together for something like a trial in industry, doesn't allow the startup to be creative, but it doesn't get the public sector as much benefit as it could do if
But
both of those could be
it's a
achieved flex
mindset.
together.
It's a
Well, I understand
mindset, though, isn't it?
It's yes, it's a mindset, but it's also the constraints of dealing with public money, because you have to be able to document what you've done with the taxpayer money, and to be able to document it, you have to have what you intend to do with it. Did you deliver? Whereas the way that a startup would work with money often isn't quite the same, because halfway through they pivot to a different theme or a different target audience. So they need that flexibility to make the best of money, but the current structure needs them to deliver what they said they would at the start.
But you see, that's interesting in itself, because I think I understand that we need to deliver value to the taxpayer and value to, because ultimately, whilst we talk about value to governments, it's not really value to governments, it's value to taxpayers, isn't it? And I wonder whether, by trying to, deliver to that, to that value and measure things, because of course, I'm not saying you shouldn't measure things and and track things to make sure that they do achieve their aims and that. Do we actually waste taxpayers' money? And one of the reasons why I say that is because I'm thinking about one of my favourite topics, ticketing. And I'm thinking about the Southeastern Flexible Ticketing Scheme, SEFT, as it was known. And that sort of became, a bit of a beast. And part of, the reason why, maybe it became part of beast was because it was said this was what had to be delivered, and no deviation was allowed from it, even when they discovered things that weren't working. So actually, are we just continuing to fund failure just because we can't be a bit more pragmatic?
I don't have I'm keeping away from giving you a summation of what you're hoping I would say.
I don't know. I just was having a conversation. I wasn't trying to.
We are not giving an opinion at all on whether things are a waste or not a waste. We are.
No, it wasn't really about the waste. It was more about the process. By being sort of quite rigid and inflexible, and not having that agility to be able to pivot. Does it actually mean that things actually end up, because it takes us longer to get to find the failure?
Yes.
Because we continue to think, well, that was what we said we'd do, so we have to keep going down that path, even though everybody knows that maybe this isn't working, we should revisit it. But it takes it's like an iceberg, isn't it? This takes or a glacier or something, where it just takes a long time for it to sort of reach a painful end or something.
Yes, yeah, no, I get that. And also, though we particularly kept our discussion to companies who had public money and gone through the process, what you end up with is, in this current structure, you are less attractive to companies applying through your process, because they can't work within that structure. So our sample group were those people who had gone through the process, but we've acknowledged the fact that there are lots of companies who didn't go through the process that we didn't talk to, so we don't know what they thought about it. The purpose of the report was to start a conversation similar to our Parcels to Passengers report we did a few years ago. That started a conversation in working groups, which are doing very well now and moving the agenda forward. We would like this to start the discussion. We are a very small group, so we can't do that level of investigation. But we can certainly raise it to say this needs wider consideration.
So what are you hoping that people will take away from the report then?
I think primarily what was, unfortunately with a podcast, you can't see my massive gesticulating arms, but I am swaying them around as I speak to you. And I can't do that with sulking up and down in my voice tone. The main thing being just to understand the different ways that the startups versus the public sector work. They work in a different way. It's not that one's right and wrong. It's just that trying to get a funding support package that meets the needs of both types of organizations is very, very difficult just because of the speed at which they work. And what they consider the measure of success to be. Because the public sector would say the measure of success is you applied, you got the funding, you delivered the funding, and you have an output, tick, successful delivery. But the startup private company would not consider it successful if you get the funding and then nothing happens, because there's no route to market, because the thing you've developed through this funding support is already what's the word? Behind the times, because something new has come along.
It's not just that though, is it? Because I've sort of like, with other groups in Scotland and SMEs and that I've been talking about, it's not just the whole sort of like getting the funding, like it's sort of, I mean, the route to market is also really important as well, is because does the piece explore anything on sort of like what happens next, in terms of procurement or anything?
You'll have to have a read.
Because that's something that always...
But giving you a clue, it does.
Because that's always something that comes up, is that, the fact that, you do the project, it might, whether it's successful, it's then what next? And then it sort of like gets, bogged down into procurement rules, and nobody seems to, have found, that way to unlock it.
There is no way to unlock it at the moment because of the way that all structures exist. And it cannot be for these startups. It's not their job to come up with a new structure. It's the industry's job and the public sector's job to come up with a new structure until you can help people identify what particular not pain points are, but what the ways to get over these hurdles. I mean, the classic one is that you get some public funding to design a new camera of some sort. You're a small company and you build a brilliant camera. The public sector go, yeah, we'd love to buy it. Right, we need to go through public sector procurement, and you don't win the procurement.
Yeah, but that is a common.
It is a very common thing, and it is a frustration, I think, all around. But the beast that is procurement. I mean, do you know who Mr. or Mrs. Procurement is? Can you have a word with them?
Well, I think that's also quite interesting, because I think, quite a lot of, procurement departments and heads of procurement have been really engaged the last 2 or 3 years, but even they've sort of like, struggled to, I mean, do you think, actually it's not just about procurement and the rules and things? Some of it is also maybe there just isn't enough resource to maybe, deal with some of that.
Yeah, quite. Well, yes. Also, we're trying to,
somebody whose job is, to sort of like, to be that person in the room when, when startups are developing, products and developing ideas and that, so that, they're involved in a process that allows that route to market or allows, an ongoing contract.
Yes. I mean, all I can say is yes, but that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
I think we're unfortunately now in another one of those cycles where people are waiting for a structural change, because that's going to solve everything. Though it may or may not, just waiting for the structural change, which in our case is Great British Railways, or political change. We've got a hiatus of 18 months before, the change happens. So there's the risk that people just go, oh, that thing will solve it, let's wait for that change. But that change keeps getting pushed away further away. And also, just because the structure changes, then you have to do all the work streams to use that structure to change. You know how Brexit was supposed to get rid of all our procurement rules. So now we have Brexit. Why
Breakfast.
haven't we
I still love breakfast.
But we have had for a few years the opportunity to remove some of the public sector procurement issues or barriers. Why we have not capitalised on that ability yet. So just because the new railway structure comes in doesn't automatically mean these changes will happen. So we need to be continually pushing into the debate.
Yeah, because I was kind of
you're gesticulating now.
I know because I had two thoughts, because one, I was thinking about the whole GBR and what this means for GBR, but then because you took it down the road of sort of like we're in this hiatus and that, and part of that was because I keep recently I've been thinking a lot about when the William Shapps review first came out, and we did a podcast on it, and I think we were very positive about what that could do.
Yeah.
And I think I said at the time, but my fear was that it would just get into this whole sort of like debating about the structure, and it would just take a long time to implement. But in this whole time, and life has kind of moved on a lot as well, not just in terms of what's happening in railways, but with the war in Ukraine, with skill shortages, some of the problems that were faced by the review have actually got worse. And in some ways, I kind of look back, because we're also coming up to the 5-year. Actually, today might be the day of the 5-year anniversary of the Thameslink timetable and the northern timetable, which sort of like led to this whole review and that. And kind of often what crosses my mind, actually, if government had decided to do nothing and just leave the industry to sort itself out, and for things to bed down and just sort of like work on what those issues were, would actually we be in a better position today than we are?
Potentially.
Because what always concerns me is, and it's not unfair, it's actually that all these problems, they're all causing problems for customers, but also staff that work in the railway as well, and it's creating uncertainty around. That's part of the reason why when I speak to people, when I speak to people who work on the railway, they have no idea what's going on. They're feeling uncertain about the future, and that's what's part of what's behind some of these strikes, because it's not just about the issue of pay. They are really fearful about what's happening, because they don't see anything happening. So there's kind of that, and then this is all leading to poor customer service and poor customer experience, because a badly motivated staff don't deliver. They don't come to themselves to work presenting their best selves, because they're not feeling motivated. They don't, there's no vision, there's no clarity on what they're doing. And that's and then couple that with there being no money, post pandemic and all the rest of it. It's sort of like a vicious circle of decline, really, and it doesn't make you feel very positive about things.
Sure. I'm not sure if it's I stand optimistic that it's not a period of a vicious circle of decline, but it is a circle of waiting.
There is, and I think that's the thing, is that everybody, what are we all waiting for? Godot.
I don't know what that is, but
it's a play.
Oh.
It's a play about waiting for somebody that never ever comes.
Oh,
yeah.
Right.
And that's almost and that's almost the point, is that I think in some ways that do we all have to stop the waiting and try to sort of like Rail Innovation Group tries to sort of like push on the discussion and sort of like say, well, we can all make small changes. It doesn't always have to be about this big bang structure. But I think there is I am worried about the lack of leadership and the lack of direction and the lack of anybody saying anything, because everyone got quite excited that, Mark Harper, declared that, GBR, it's still our intention, to do legislation. But of course, the letter from Railway Industry Association was sent to the Prime Minister this week, because there are multiple rumours going around that the legislation isn't going to make it in this Parliament because of the hiatus, and I think the reality is that probably, in the general, I mean, there's probably two ways you can look at it. One, it's not going to go through because there's just so much other legislation that needs to go through that may take priority over the railway. And the railway can kind of, I guess the view might be, between, sort of like Department for Transport and Cabinet Office, that it's in a steady state. It might not be in a good steady state, but it's in a steady state and it's not going to fall over. When you think about, other wider issues that are going on with, health service, education or whatever. So, so it can tick along. Or the other view could be that actually they could do what they did, just before the 97 election, because they think they're going to lose anyway, and they'll just push through the legislation and leave it to whoever's going to pick up the pieces.
Well,
a fait accompli to whoever that might be, maybe a hung parliament. And of course, that's the thing, isn't it? Transport, when there's so many things going on, transport is never a big issue, is it? Because not many people,
until it breaks, and everyone
until it breaks,
Yes.
And you can guarantee it'll break again, because just purely because it's just not in a good state. And it needs, I don't know whether it needs the legislation or not, but it certainly needs stronger leadership, and it certainly needs just to be enabled for the railway. And I say collectively within sort of like a family term, I suppose, or an industry term, just be allowed to get on and deliver it and to make those improvements. Because I think, one of the things that I was at Holyrood last week, and one of the things that's certainly sort of like becoming also clear up in Scotland, that as work is slowing down because of sort of like various hiatuses on projects and things, is that this is actually storing up problems for the future, because we're talking about the skills agenda and diversity and that. But if we're cancelling projects or slowing down projects because of funding issues or political issues or whatever they are, it's actually preventing us from recruiting people into the industry, and it's preventing us getting apprentices, and that's just creating more problems down the future.
Yes. Although, if we have a huge labour shortage, then we might not have enough labour to do these projects anyway. Right. What can I update you on? Railtex is on at the moment. I'm going tomorrow because I'm on the panel for younger professionals. What have you been at?
Well, I just mentioned I've been to Holyrood to the RIA Scotland reception. I know.
Which reception?
The Railway Industry Association Scottish reception, sponsored by Graham Simpson, MSP, who is also, I do like to mention him because he's also a really big advocate for developing skills in rail and also women in rail.
Oh, what else is going on?
And then it's the Women in Rail Awards next week.
Women in Rail. Are you a woman in rail?
Allegedly.
Are you going to the awards?
I am, yes. I'm popping down for one night only, as they say.
Good. Oh, and before we go, you need to tell us about your event that you're going to be speaking at, the Rail Innovation Group event at the end of June. Here is your audience.
Oh, because I didn't realise you were going to ask me to do it now. Because I thought we were just going. I thought we were just going to have a. I thought we were just going to have a short conversation about it afterwards. So I have a new business venture. Well, it's not so new. It's been going a couple of years, but we've sort of like we've been testing things and developing and that. So it's Future Travel Studio, and we're still thinking about the overall event, but it's going to be the 28th of June, and we think we're going to do a panel event. Which is going to be, working title, The Power of Empathy, Creating a Human-Centred Rail Experience. So we're going to tell you a bit more about what Future Travel Studio do, and we are going to curate a panel of experts where we're going to explore the challenges and opportunities of designing a transport network that truly understands the needs of real customers.
Wow, stay tuned for this space.
So hopefully it's going to be very exciting, and we're going to be inviting some exciting panelists, of which actually we hope that, Liam, you're going to agree to be one of our panelists.
Oh, well, now I know. Wouldn't miss
You've
it.
been officially asked.
Right. Speak to you soon.
Speak to you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to another episode of What Moves Us. We hope we moved you. For more episodes, you'll definitely want to subscribe to our channel.
Until next time.